I got to know Nicola a little bit last year online over Zoom when she offered to share at Learn Free last year. And Nicola has quite it's a proper story, and it's not the easiest story. I think, she's had to go through quite a lot, and it is one of those stories of overcoming and finding healing and being transformed yourself as well, and your children. And I'm going to let her tell it, but it was incredibly moving to sit in with her last year, and now she's doing it in person, and she's just going to be herself, sharing as she does. And so Nicola, here we go.
Thanks so much. Thanks, Julia. Okay, so it is, although I've had ages to prepare, it's still off the cuff because I'm not a preparing type, I'm afraid. I am showing the video again from last year because it's a quick way of telling part of the story. So this is another way of telling the story, a little piece of paper I did last night. So in the middle of this piece of paper at the top it says Isaac's accident. So we've got before Isaac's accident and after Isaac's accident. The black ball in the centre of that accident lasts several years. So Isaac's accident represents trauma and falling apart and a complete breakdown, but then it also represents some of the recovery. But what is really interesting is the before and the after. I'm now in the after. We're all in the after now. But his accident illuminated my life before and after in a way that I could never have imagined. And I think it'll show today how incredible his accident has been for our family. So I'm going to ask you to play the film if that's okay.
The rescue from a field, the loss of consciousness, the stretcher, the ambulance, the scans, the fractured skull, and the fear. A freak accident. My son was kicked in the head by a horse. A life-transforming was kicked in the head by a horse. A life-transforming moment in time. The rescue from a field, the loss of consciousness, the stretcher, the ambulance, the scans, the fractured skull, and the fear of mortality. The days in high dependency, the panic and stress, my 8-year-old son. His release from hospital and the casual comment from the neurosurgeon that he could return to school the following week. The emotional turmoil of my boy and of myself. The impossible entwining of pain, sleepless nights and agonised days. Ambiguous grief. He wanted to go to school, and so he tried it 2 months after the accident. But even on that first day, he was so overwhelmed and breathing strangely. I wish, in retrospect, that first day had also been his last. His desire to go to school faded quickly, and soon he didn't want to attend at all. The boy who had previously loved school, and who had been loved by school. His experience was so different now, but the teachers couldn't see it. He was frozen in fear and was overwhelmed. But these were internal struggles and sensations, invisible to most. He took neuropsychological tests and had significantly diminished vocabulary and comprehension. His maths ability hadn't declined. He's too good at maths to have a brain injury. He reluctantly managed 2 days a week at school, but those days brought extreme behavioural challenges, head banging on the wall, hours to settle, crying, aggression, loss of control. Me writing to school and to his neuropsychologist most weeks, illustrating his beyond extreme behaviour. They couldn't believe me and insisted my son was fine at school. A sense of professional conspiracy. Doctor listens to teacher and teacher listens to doctor but neither listened to me. Family don't understand. They too are more interested in what the teacher and doctor have to say. Me losing my voice and losing my mind. The sense that no one is helping him and no one can see what it's like for us. The scaffolding holding my mind together just crumbled and collapsed. One day I was reading a story to my son and daughter, and the book asked them to make a wish. My son hesitantly said, "I wish never to return to school again." I made that wish come true, and I took my daughter out of school too. We backed away from the world. We developed our own rhythm of resting and being quiet. There followed many years of calm, unpressured life. Friendships came in the shape of mentors from the local school. A couple of kind and gentle tutors helped him to stay in touch with his love of maths, computers and science. Computer gaming became a rewarding passion for him. Gradually his mind settled. He felt safe at home. He lost his trust in the outside world, but I trusted him to make his own decisions and provided lots of loving support. 7 years later, he has recovered so well. He is intelligent, delightful and happy. He still has agoraphobia, but he isn't distressed or angry. I'm so proud of my incredible boy, and I'm proud of myself as a mum to have navigated this tumultuous and traumatic journey.
Credited her really. She absolutely loved herself to set design, and we've done quite a lot of filmmaking since her and I, so that's ignited a passion in her. So what I could never have expected from that was the way that story has totally changed who I am and totally changed everyone in my family. It's obviously led me to trust myself and to believe in autonomous home education as a tool for recovery. The way Isaac has recovered has been by learning to trust himself again. He started at a very low point when he left school, a really, really low point. Very, very emotionally labile, very everywhere, completely out of control in lots and lots of ways. He lived in the living room for 2 years. He played the same game on the computer over and over. He'd never been a computer person before his accident, but he was still young. But he was 8. He played Roblox games. He played really mechanical, simple games. But, no one was telling him what to do. And I can see, as I reflect back on that there was a reason for the really, really simple games. And it was a process of regrowing, reorganising his brain from the simplest point. I kept getting new trampolines for him every year. He hasn't been using them for years, but I read somewhere about, as a recovery tool from brain injury, rolling around and using your body to help realign things. He struggled with car sickness and general movement, a bit of nausea associated with that and a bit of discomfort. So rolling around on the trampoline basically was one of the little steps that helped him. Playing on computers has been the big step, and transforming his mother and his sister has been a big step as well, because he needed to teach me how to look after him, and the only way of looking after him was to trust him, because every suggestion I made actually really did not help. Not at all. We just go back in time, and I can reflect on, I was encouraging him to go back to football, I was encouraging him to come out to Oxford or something, to come and participate in life. I suppose I was afraid. I mean, obviously I was afraid. And I let fear rule how I behaved, rather than letting trust rule how I behaved. And also his life had changed so much, and he'd been such an amazing kid before his accident. You're kind of like desperately clinging on to it and hoping you can recover something of who he had been before. but that absolutely wasn't to be. That's not the story. He's not who he was before. It just took a few years for me to actually realise that. And an interesting little side note on that is some kids change their name after a brain injury, and I almost wish we'd done that, because his middle name's Joe, and I think he could have been Joe Leyland after the accident, and then I could have got used to the fact this is just literally a different person. Anything you knew about this child is not who they are now. He was the most calm and patient kid who would spend hours playing Lego, hours doing puzzles. He had no emotional issues before, just calm. But then after, he's just everywhere, banging his head on the wall, shouting, swearing, hitting me and Heidi and just being aggressive. But it wasn't his fault in the least. We all know that. It wasn't his fault. It's the process of a brain injury. As I learned about autonomous education and dived into, reading a few books about it and getting to know the community, I started reflecting on my childhood and my experience of education. And it's taken years, it's taken absolute years for me to get to this place. But I suffered with mental health. In my childhood, I remember being 12 and feeling depressed. And I remember being an angry child and a frustrated child. I remember having the most awful relationship with my mother, and it has improved a little bit, but not much. So I grew up in a very controlling family and went to school which was very controlling for my type of personality, it seems. I think by nature, very creative and a bit of a dreamer and a bit quirky. I see myself in my daughter now, and quirky doesn't come close. So I see in my daughter hints of what maybe I would have been if I hadn't been under control. I was so squashed and controlled. I was dysregulated, without a doubt. I knew I was depressed. I used to write at 12. I used to write, I hate myself, I hate myself, I hate myself. Just pages of I hate myself. Just naturally, clearly that was unself-conscious feeling of my life. And it didn't go well. It didn't go well. I did used to go to exams when it came to exam time, but I used to write really facetious replies. I used to, why are you asking me these questions? Surely you know the answer. I was so, I know. Just totally unengaged, totally uninterested. Like, what is the point? Why have you been torturing me for years to stuff this stuff in my head when it didn't do anything for me at all? But also this feeling, well, I'm not lacking in intelligence. It's just no one's talking to me. There was a massive lack of individuality. Even my mother, who, obviously because of her background and because of the culture that she grew up in, she thought it was completely right, that I wasn't an individual, I was just hers to control. And that's her style of personality and her nature. So I would say, my life was low autonomy, zero autonomy, a high frustration. I went on to drink to excess, to have lots and lots of jobs. Some were adventurous and exciting. It was not that I didn't have an exciting life, I did, but it was all I was on a self-destructive pathway. I would say I was an alcoholic by my 30s. I was probably well before that, but I was a mess. I picked myself up to a degree when I got married and had kids, but it was Isaac's accident and the aftermath of Isaac's accident that illuminated what my childhood had been. Following Isaac's accident, I did have some therapy. It's all taken time. It's 9.5 years ago now. I had some psychotherapy. I did online courses in parenting, in educational models. I did an 8-week course in mindfulness, and then I liked mindfulness, and I went and did a master's degree in mindfulness, and I trained to be a mindfulness teacher. And during my mindfulness degree, which actually, to be perfectly blunt with you, I didn't finish because the academic requirement didn't suit my personality, and it was triggering my mental health. And I got some therapy to help me with it, but I still knew that I was having to beat myself around the head to do academic work. I think because of the trauma in my childhood, It was just reflecting back to that place. But I did what I needed to do. I did 18 months, and 6 months of that 18 months was on self-compassion. And that was my massive turning point. 6 months of changing every cell in my body to start to like myself and not live in that self-hatred. It's unbelievably, it sticks to you. You know, if you are someone, for whatever reason, the quirks of life, the chance of life, the low autonomy, you know, the school system, I don't know exactly what it was that made me that depressed, self-hating person, but I'm not that person now. You know, 6 months of self-compassion, I turned it all around, and I live in a completely different way. I mean, I've got the same lifestyle. I walk dogs for a living. You know, that's my job. I walk dogs and I home educate the kids. Heidi walks lots of dogs with me. She, you know, we're just out in the countryside. We live a very peaceful, but also undemanding life. I don't put demands on either of the kids, and I don't put demands on myself either, which is probably why I didn't prepare for the talk, you know, because I can't seem to. I just prefer this life. I've stepped over into this easy way, which is self-compassionate, living in the moment. It's allowing my philosophical and quirky bent full rein. I get to just completely be myself when I'm walking. I'm not actually worrying. And I think that's what Isaac and Heidi both needed me to be. I've let my inner poet come out, and this is quite fun because I wouldn't say it's good, but it's actually quite fun to just try. You know, it's quite fun to allow part of me that I don't think I have ever allowed out until this year. So I'm going to read you a couple of poems. She found the abundant waterfall of self-compassion and rested there day after painful day. She found peace. She forgave herself. The lifetime of guilt, shame, and addiction. The spurs of tortured mental health. Within her, a fragile child, it was never her fault. A childhood of criticism, hostility, ridicule. From a broken place, harm was done. How could she know herself? Where could she find integrity? The crash of child meets world. Harsh parents, harsh school, harsh culture. Where could she find acceptance, love, honesty? Where could she find joy and stability? Instead, alcoholism and abandon, self-destruction was her path. Instinct and courage illuminated the tangled route to self-compassion. Hidden, unknown, difficult. Alignment of the stars, fortuitous chance. How many people find the abundant waterfall of self-compassion? And this one. I'm hoping my mother is not going to watch this. Do we prioritise achievement and striving and forget about peace? A hellscape of dog-eat-dog, winning and domination, and forget beauty and joy? In striving, do we lose track of love? My mother wanting for nothing, living a joyless life. Was she looking in the wrong place? Money and status is her goal. From here she worships the wealthy, believes the elite, and scorns the poor. No love or light in her life. The god of accumulation and wealth misguided her. Why cultivate peace when winning is an option? The ceaseless ladder of competition. She will win, but will she know peace? And a bit of this. So this is creativity for me. I mean, obviously loads of things are creativity. I just live a creative life when I can, but this is more of an illustration of what creativity means to me. This is a big picture at home. I printed it last night rather than bringing in the picture. All it is the roots and the branches of a tree. But mindfulness put all the colour on that tree. Before mindfulness and self-compassion, there was no colour coming out of my branches. There was no freedom, and there was just this ridiculous amount of self-destruction. And it's just bizarre how learning to love ourselves means we can lead with love. You know, our children naturally love themselves if we love ourselves. And not striving and not pushing and letting the now be now is extraordinarily powerful and healing. I've got one more. Does anyone want to hear one last? There's one last poem, and then there'll be questions for anyone that wants to. And this is about mindfulness. The sky lives in me. I am outside and the sky comes in. Lack of skin, no barrier between mind and sky. I see blue and white. I see openness and liberation. I am at one with the sky. The odd plane may travel through. The odd bird will fly by. I take the sky with me. I find peace inside and out. It's probably short, but that's time for talking, isn't it?
Yeah, if you just, let's see if we've got questions coming from that one.
Sorry, I didn't check the time at all, did I?
We're fine. You're well early. Definitely. So, so we have a question. Yeah, I'll take the microphone over to Sophia.
Am I not? Oh, okay. Thank you for sharing that. It was lovely to hear about your journey. So my knowledge of self-compassion, I'll sum it up. I had to Google what it meant recently. So what advice would you give to someone who was on the beginning of a journey into self-compassion?
Yeah, exactly. Well, this is something, actually, I plan to make some videos around that story, because I think for a lot of people it's a real journey inwards, and I think we need some guiding towards what self-compassion can be, because I know how easy it is just not to be there. I think it starts with self-forgiveness. I think reflecting on your childhood and reflecting on your life is a really beneficial stage to take. So reflecting on moments that you feel shame, and then metaphorically or physically hugging yourself and saying, well, that wasn't my fault, and it's okay. It's not to say that it was someone else's fault, but it's just not to apportion blame at all, really. It's to offer that loving support to keep you going. So as I look back, I mean, there was ample in my history, which is why it probably took me 6 months. There was so much in my history that I had to go and address and be like, that is okay. It's okay. It's okay that you did that stupid thing. It's okay that you, whatever, fell over drunk and, ruined something. Whatever it was, it's all okay. So, looking back over life and offering compassion to the moments that you feel shame about, I think. And alongside that, finding a way of finding joy in little things, and allowing yourself to. So that was instead of writing an essay. I was writing an essay on self-compassion and it felt too painful. So I, drew what it meant to me. So finding a way of letting it out, letting some of your feelings out of your body. I do some, part of the talk that I can come on to, which I forgot, obviously. I work for a mental health charity now for mothers of children with mental health issues. And I run listening support groups, and I bring compassion to them, and they come to me every week. And the power that I've got by being as healed as I am is incredible. They're always non-homeschooled parents. They're parents whose children are at school, and they're parents whose children are suicidal, self-harm, in an inpatient unit, all sorts of things going on. And obviously that resonates so deeply for me because I've been there in my life, but also I've moved on from it. And so I get so much out of that, and I can give compassion to other people, but also once you start growing in self-compassion, your compassion for other people becomes limitless. So, it's a massive, ever-giving thing. It's very, it's just such a positive thing, and it's incredible that our culture doesn't promote that at an earlier part of life. But obviously, competition and striving are usually in direct opposition with self-compassion. We're pushing and pushing and pushing, and that is not, oh, just rest and take it easy and be kind to yourself. You know, they're just very opposite things. And I know I maybe occasionally do need to push myself, and I don't, but, you know, in time, with the process of kindness. So that was a bit of a complex reply to your thing, but yeah.
Yes, Mum. That actually fits with what I was saying earlier in my talk about that, you know, the schools are driven by results, they're driven by that competition, they're driven by that achievement. And there is no target within a school to have all of the kids coming out the other end with good mental health. And I think we do need to change that. I think, you know, if the idea of it, I mean, it goes back to what education is about, and you're talking about your own self-education there as well.
Yeah.
What's education for? Education is to make us able to survive in the outside world. It's also to make us be able to survive in a contented way. I refuse to use the word happy because it sounds a bit American with cheesy grins. It's not. We don't need to be happy all the time. We need to be content. But if we can live a contented life and are able to look after ourselves and be self-sufficient and well mentally and physically, then education has achieved what it should have set out to achieve.
Well, exactly.
And we have it so skewed right now that competition creates a brutality that is currently damaging our children.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, I remember what it felt like when I was at school, and now it is 100 times worse. You know, when I was at school, I felt so frustrated and turned it all against myself. So, you know, what did it achieve? It achieved someone with massive, massive problems who couldn't understand their place in life at all. And the people, you know, the mums I speak to week after week now, it's exponential and it's tragic, and it's caused by, you know, pressure and forgetting that we're humans in the world and that suffering is natural and that we've got feelings. And, you know, I just think it's quite it's an abusive system. And with Isaac's story, it became so obvious that the teachers didn't know who was in their classroom because they didn't know how much he'd changed, and yet he's changed like 100%. And you didn't notice that. Like, you know, I don't understand who you are to stand in front of my children every week if you can't even tell the difference between someone who's had a brain injury and not. I mean, where's the interaction? Where's the reciprocity? Where's the respect? It's just utterly bizarre, isn't it? It's utterly bizarre, and it's so hard. I mean, it's so hard to step outside. When I left, I wish I'd taken him out earlier, obviously. But the process of taking him out, I felt judged by everyone in the village and judged by people. And someone mentioned to me, oh, I heard you had an argument with the teacher in the playground. You know, God knows what everyone was saying about me. Obviously, I was broken. You know, I was obviously completely and utterly broken when I took them out of school, not surprisingly. But still, they couldn't find it in them to be human. Just, what is going on in our culture?
Make Mum run over here again. But again, it's you doing that thing outside of the paradigm they live within.
Yeah.
And you are questioning what is the accepted norm. And we all do that because we've all home educated. We've all questioned that norm.
Yeah.
And it's quite a scary place to be until you get that confidence. So, you know, all power to your elbow. I think you're doing a great job.
Well, yeah, you know. I mean, my kids have thrived. They've become their wonderful selves.
That is the point.
Well, precisely. So Isaac just designed a computer game and entered it into competition. So hopefully, I mean, he doesn't... He still has his quirks. He's still dragging back. He doesn't want to run. He doesn't want any lessons in computer design. He doesn't want anyone pushing him or demanding anything. But he did manage to enter a game competition. So who knows whether that's his future or not? I don't know. Heidi, you would struggle to find a more quirky person than my daughter. and she's just exuberant and wild and free, and you just think, oh my, that is a surprise. Out of freedom comes this massive personality. So, yeah.
And I want to say, and I look at you, Nicola, even from last year, I can see a difference in you.
Yeah.
And, I think this is the whole thing that what the message of the conference is about, is that, which I wish local authorities and the government would understand, is that you're actually creating parents who want to be responsible for their children. So they're not sort of saying, well, you know what, my job's done now, the school's got them. You're actually wanting to be responsible. Why would a country not want parents to actually want that responsibility? But I wanted to, your story, and I'm sure you've heard of the kintsukuroi, the Japanese art of mending broken china. And that's, to me, when you feel broken, often you need a story like that, because they take these broken pieces of china and they don't just mend them, they mend them with gold, and to highlight the cracks and the breaks, but with the understanding that the item is all the more beautiful for having been mended. And I think sometimes it takes a long time to find the gold in those cracks, what's come out of it. But, over time you can look back and you can see, well, you know what, look at all the good, look at all the lovely things. And the fact that you can relate to other people and they can relate to you, because you're oozing something without even knowing it, based on your experiences.
Yeah.
And others are basically able to come and actually sit in that and benefit from it.
Yeah.
Which, if you hadn't gone through anything like that,
Yeah.
you would be no use to them whatsoever, I'm sorry to say. You'd have nothing to offer. You'd have nothing to offer.
Yeah.
And it's through that going through, and it is such a powerful story. Does anyone else have a question or something you want to comment on to Nicola?
Thank you, that was great. I feel quite similar to you, not that I've had a traumatic experience, but I'm very much in a self-compassion bubble life.
Yeah.
My children aren't, they haven't been to school, they're tiny, so.
Yeah.
But I feel in this bubble, and the rest of the world is just kind of tearing around, and I'm in this blissful place that I really adore, but I don't feel like I'm rippling out to the people around me. And I wondered if you feel a ripple effect of the people around you, or how you would recommend we kind of breach that barrier maybe between these two polar opposite places.
This is the thing, it is the polar opposite, and that is what makes it hard. And it's also the smallness of one voice, and you need so many voices. I would like to, I think it ripples out gradually in my broken places groups. They're not called broken places, but they clearly are, parents of broken children. I've set up a Facebook group called The Mindful Home Educator, and I would like to do videos about self-compassion and just, this is what because it's not what it sounds like, is it? Even the name self-compassion, you don't get the feeling that involves forgiving yourself for all your past mistakes. You don't realise the immensity of being, of what self-compassion really means just by hearing the word. It's the same as mindfulness. It's an incredibly, people have their own version of what it means. And what, mindfulness is taking time and, learning to trust yourself and experiencing the world on a daily basis rather than living in the past and the future. Psychologically, it's a really healthy way of living, but I'm not sure that everyone thinks that when they hear of mindfulness, so it's an education process, isn't it? A growing education process, but it's a massive battle when half the 99% of society is on another side. It's hard.
I want to just add to that we've had a speaker at Learn Free before, Brittany Burton, and Brittany's really good at reaching out into her local community and getting involved in local community. So if that's kind of what you're thinking, is how do I kind of connect more, she's quite a good person to go, and her website is ourthrivinghive.com. So just something you may want to look into. I'm just finding out how we're doing for lunch, because that's next on the thing. Any other questions? I know Karen's going to be sharing later on something that touches in a lot of ways. I think she must be getting excited, because it actually, a lot of what you're sharing is kind of what she's trying to do some research into. So we're looking forward to hearing from Karen. Anyone else got anything? Yeah?
Yes.
Yes. Yeah, so
there is
so
only
for the live stream, Karen said that what Nicola shared is so authentic, and there's great power in that. Yes.
And I fall apart laughing because I don't seem to have another way of being. So,
well, that gives the rest of us hope and courage, because we're all ordinary, actually, at the end of the day, but ordinarily extraordinary. So. Yes, so we can turn that off. So thank you so much, Nicola, for sharing your story.